I'm getting pats on the back, and I'm called super mom. I'm called superwoman. And inside my physical body, I'm having conversations in my mind like this. Oh my God, I can't live like this. This is not sustainable. How am I going to survive? I could feel the train wreck coming, but I was so afraid to figure out how to stop that I just kept going, kept going, kept going. As a woman, you can no longer pretend that your needs do not affect your relationship with your child. You need to realize that how you desire to feel is actually part of the equation.
Welcome to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. If some days you doubt yourself and you don't know what you're doing, if you've ugly cried alone in your bedroom because you felt like you're failing, well, I just want you to know you're not alone and you have come to the right place. Raising tweens and teens in today's world is not easy, and I'm on a mission to equip you to love well and to raise emotionally healthy, happy tweens and teens that thrive. I believe that moms are heroes, and we have the power to transform our family and to impact future generations. If you are looking for answers, encouragement, and to become more of the mom and the woman that you want to be, welcome. I'm Cheryl Gould, and I am so glad that you're here. Hey friend, welcome to the show today, and I am so glad that you are here. And I want to start today by sharing something that my friend Amy sent to me yesterday. And this is a meme entitled How to Be a Mom in 2017. And we could actually change that to be 2024 because it still applies to us today. Make sure your children's academic, emotional, psychological, mental, spiritual, physical, nutritional, and social needs are met while being careful not to overstimulate, understimulate, improperly medicate, helicopter, or neglect them in a screen-free, processed foods-free, GMO-free, negative energy-free, plastic-free, body-positive, socially conscious, egalitarian, but also authoritative, nurturing, but fostering of independence, gentle, but not overly permissive, pesticide-free, two-story, multilingual home, preferably in a cul-de-sac, with a backyard and 1.5 siblings spaced at least 2 years apart for proper development. Also, don't forget the coconut oil. And then it goes on to say how to be a mom in literally every generation before ours. Feed them sometimes. Oh my gosh. We were having a huge conversation about how we can feel so exhausted that we can feel like we've lost ourselves as moms, or feel like we're constantly abandoning our own needs. And if you are relating to this, you're going to love my special guest today, Heather Chauvin. And Heather has been named the next generation's thought leader in parenting and women's leadership. She's the author of Dying to Be a Good Mother and the podcast host of Emotionally Uncomfortable. And Heather's work supports women to manage their energy and time so they don't have to sacrifice their impact at work or at home with their kids. And her mission is to crack women open to their deepest potential and lead the life their soul craves. There are so many nuggets of wisdom and goodness in this episode. So let's dive in. Welcome, Heather, to the Moms of Tweens and Teens podcast. I am so excited to have you on today.
Thank you, Cheryl. I love these conversations, especially when I'm so excited. We're going to get into it.
Oh my gosh, I love like everything that you're doing and how we're aligned. It's going to be such an interesting conversation, I know, for all of our listeners. And one of the things that I really want to talk about is our emotional well-being. That is such a challenge and a struggle for moms of tweens and teens, and how to support our kids with their emotional health, and where it intersects with us nurturing our emotional health and also our kids in such a challenging age. There's so much going on, as you know, with three boys. And how many, do you have one teenager, two teenagers?
Yeah, my boys are 19, 14, and 11 right now. So
Okay.
all
So
different stages. Yeah. Yeah.
you're in the tween and the teen phase.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I want to start out and I want you to tell our listeners, like, how did you get here? How did you um, do what you're doing?
Oh, yeah. So it's funny to talk about emotional well-being and emotional health, all the things, because that was never in my awareness growing up. That was something that my parents never talked about. I think this is newer in the generational conversations. Um, and honestly, most of us don't do the work until we have to do the work, until something becomes so emotionally uncomfortable in our lives that it's kind of like put in front of us. So for me, I was 18 when I became a mother. I was a teen mom, and it was not intentional, but pre motherhood, I was the teenager who obviously in hindsight, I didn't know any of this, but I have there's a rebel inside of me. So I was a questioner, and I was not the A+ student. Um, but I would retreat. So I say my addiction or my drug of choice was actually sleep. Like I just my body would shut down. I did not know what was going on inside of my body and my mind. And so the adults around me would say, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Get up, let's go, blah, blah, blah. And I did not know my body. I did not know my nervous system. I definitely did not know my emotional well-being. And so I just, being a kid, I'm like, I'm heavy. Meaning I feel physically heavy. I'm just shutting down. And so I'm going to sleep and I'm just going to surrender to what is, right? Which affected my education, which affected my relationship with my mother, which affected my mental health, and then which got me into a relationship that was not healthy, and I got pregnant. But here's the caveat, and I'm telling this for a reason. I get pregnant, and I remember looking at my son for the first time thinking, I do not want to become a statistic. I do not want my child to become a statistic. And there was this primalness inside of me that the switch kind of flipped on, but I think it was definitely fear-based of, I do not want to fail at my primal purpose as a mother. I didn't want to do that. I think in hindsight, looking back, I was really trying to I was so terrified of my child ever feeling the way that I felt as a teenager. I
Mm-hmm.
did not know that at the time, but the primal instinct to run away from that and to heal that. So then I became an overachiever. So before I was considered an underachiever. So then I became an overachiever. So I was doing all the things, but I was actually doing it from a place of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So who do I need to become? What do I need to do? I literally went from barely passing high school to and never taking a university credit to figuring out how to get into university, paying my own way, getting all the things, doing this while I was single, while raising my son. And Cheryl, this is where the culturally, conversations for women need to change and parents in general need to change because I'm getting pats on the back and I'm called super mom. I'm called superwoman. And inside my physical body, I'm having conversations in my mind like this. Oh my God, I can't live like this. This is not sustainable. How am I going to survive? No, 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 not this, not this, not this. Like, this is not good. I could feel the like train wreck coming, but I was so afraid to figure out how to stop that I just kept going, kept going, kept going. And so got educated. Thank goodness my mom actually let me stay at home, but I remember trying to go figure out like how to live on my own, government assistance, trying to like, the whole quote unquote work-life balance thing. And so here I am building my life. And then fast forward 9 years, within that chunk of time, I get educated, I become a social worker. I'm now working with families, at-risk families, and I'm noticing something. I'm noticing that these children come in, these families come in with, of course, generational trauma, but the parents, doesn't matter where you are in class, like upper class, middle class, lower class, these parents deeply care about their children. And they're saying, I don't understand these children. I don't understand their behaviors. And the authorities are labeling these behaviors, right? They're labeling these families. And I go in, and maybe it's just because of the situation I was in. And I'm like, these kids need tools. These parents need education. I said, they need to be inspired and help with a transformation, not judged, not put down, not given a label or a pill and just said like, good luck, buttercup. And I could see that and nobody else could see it. And I actually went into social work, of course, wanting to make an impact in people's lives. And then realizing that these adults that were in power, authority, were not actually helping these people. They were just like literally perpetuating a cycle. And so I left social work and I started a podcast. I started my own business and I started working with parents, helping them see and understand their children's behavior. And this is what happened. I was working with these parents and we were working on child behavior and I'm trying to give them tools and strategies. And then Cheryl, I would hear things like, I don't have time to implement this. I don't have the capacity. My marriage is falling apart. I hate my career. I don't have the energy for this. And I was like, okay, but that's not what we're here for. We're here because you wanted help with your child's behavior. Let's focus on what the child is telling us. Let's focus on the child's behavior. And at the exact same time, I am diagnosed with cancer at the exact same time as I'm in startup in my business. And in that moment, I realized, remember, I have 9 years under my belt of personal development. So I've already invested personally. I've invested in parenting. I'm now invested in business. And so I'm not new to self-awareness. But what I was new to was this last layer. I mean, there's always more layers, but this last layer that was like, as a woman, you can no longer pretend that your needs do not affect your relationship with your child. You need to realize that how you desire to feel is actually part of the equation. And then that's where the book came out, Dying to Be a Good Mother. And it's not about how my body was physically dying. It was how I was self-abandoning constantly, physically, emotionally, spiritually, like financially, my desires, my mind, my body, my soul to literally serve everybody else to a point where that self-abandonment, that chronic self-abandonment, my physical body was going to die and I was not going to be good for anyone. And so it's the coming together of like, who do I want to be in my one precious life? That matters. And being a mother or being a business owner or being a wife, sister, friend, daughter, all the things, these are extensions of me, but at the core of everything, I have to reverse engineer how I want to feel in my life, which actually, I mean, we can talk about the whole cancer journey and how I did that, has allowed me to have the presence and fulfillment to then support my children in their emotional well-being as well and what they need in the moment. So I could go on, but yes, that's what got me to where I am today.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. And you made so many just connections that it was so resonating with me. And it was interesting how you said when you would shut down, it was like, yes, that's the sleep piece. That's what I do. I can still tell if I'm like shutting down, like
Yeah.
that still is a way, and I can recognize it. Like, I'm shutting down and I want to go to sleep. And that's like a dashboard light for me. Like, what am I feeling? What am I wanting to avoid? What am I not wanting to confront? Where might I need to set a boundary? And I'm scared to, and it's uncomfortable. That's why I love your podcast, Emotionally Uncomfortable. And so I'd rather sleep. And that was my way to cope growing up as well. It's just sleep, shut down, don't feel it. Or self-medicate in a way,
Yeah. But you know what's interesting about this is culturally, like I never really drank or did drugs. That is a red flag for parents of like, they're doing this, they're doing this. But culturally, especially once you get older, now the message is rest, rest, rest. And I'm like, stop telling people to rest. And I'm all about how do you want to feel? So if you sleep or you take a nap and you feel rested, great. You know you're headed in the right direction. But honestly, rest to me when I want to like hide or retreat and I'm like, oh my God, I got 12 hours of sleep. I don't feel rested. I'm like, more sleep is not going to allow me to feel rested. So then I need to dig into like, what is that? And sometimes it's going for a walk. Sometimes it's going for a run. Sometimes it's like, having really emotionally uncomfortable conversations. And so that is the piece where I'm like, we need a different level of self-awareness. It is not about do less. It's really about asking yourself, like, how do I want to feel? Because what that is for you, there will be some seasons in your life where you're like, okay, I actually need more physical sleep versus, oh no, I'm just doing it as a coping strategy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about this. I'm just struck by that. I love that you're talking about it because it is true. How do we feel versus you just need to rest? How do I know that I'm not avoiding feeling uncomfortable by resting and I'm just shutting down?
Yeah.
It's a totally different way of looking at things. So you talked about self-abandonment, and I love that. I love thinking about it like we're abandoning ourselves. And so how did you find your way back to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
When you
So,
were busy, I was wondering, working and
mhm.
achieving, what were you running from? I know those are two questions.
Yes. So I'll answer that. And then I want to go back to how I'm identifying this within my teenager.
Okay, love it.
Because as a teenager, I'm observing how this pattern of self-abandonment starts to please the parents and
Hmm.
how we can identify it in our children. Because I'm watching it in my son right now. I'll tell him and I'll call him out on it, just to bring awareness because I can see the connection that parents and children have, and they want to please us just as much or the opposite, right? They're like, they want to do the opposite of what we want to do. And everyone has a story of that. They're either like, I did this because my parents wanted me to become this, or I did the opposite because I didn't respect my parents. And so we're so interconnected. I think self-abandonment starts really, really early. So I never knew what self-abandonment was. I didn't even know who I was, but I will tell you this. I was raised with a mother who did not know who she was and lived in a chronic state of survival just because she had to. She was a single parent as well. And so she worked. And she's taught me so much in a, positive way. And I feel like figuring out who I was and who I am, because that's a chronic cycle, and feeding that woman, that part of myself, is being of service to my mother. It's like breaking those patterns and passing the baton and being like, Mom, I got it from here. And I'm going to feed myself, but I'm also going to take care of you and like serve you. So there's like a deep rooted part of that in myself. But that self-abandonment, to come back to who I am, the funny part is I always was questioning. I don't know if it's just who I am. I have no idea, but I was always like, is everyone else feeling like shit? Are you guys okay out there? Like, I was always like, why is everyone okay? Why is everybody like just doing the thing and burning out and being like, this is what it is? Like, how come nobody is questioning society? And why are they not doing anything about it? And even to this day, like now I have friends, they're all approaching middle age, and they're like still on the hamster wheel. And I'm like, you want to learn to do that thing, go do that thing. Well, my husband won't let me, my children. And I'm like, stop blaming other people for why you can't do something. Your husband would have no issue with you taking up this hobby. You are self-abandoning to please other people because you've always been a people pleaser and you are not self-aware enough to identify this pattern within you. And once you decide that you want change, you need to, again, become emotionally uncomfortable and sit in the feeling that you have always avoided. And so for me, I was really used to feeling like crap. I knew what depression felt like, hardcore. And so my actual identity was in that state. And so feeling good, and I hope people can hear me when I say this, feeling good was emotionally uncomfortable for me. And so the closer I got to myself, the actual scarier it was. So cancer, when I had my diagnosis, and I talk a lot about this in my book, was it actually, I physically remember having a moment where I checked the box and I mentally, and I was like, I am done suffering. Boop. I have met my quota. And because for years before that, I was mentally done suffering, but I didn't give myself permission to be done, like leave. Like I remember leaving the toxic culture of motherhood. I was curious about it before. Like, when you're on Instagram, you see the memes of like just the martyr syndrome and the victim mentality. I now will unfollow. And I'm like, trying to create belonging with other parents through your suffering and victim and martyrdom is literally bringing everyone down with you. That is not a rising tide lifts all ships. You are bringing them down with you because you're trying to create connection and belonging. I want to create connection with people who want to thrive. I do not want to create connection with people through our drama, because it's actually incredibly toxic. And so people will say, raising teenagers, oh, so hard. And I'm like, it is so difficult. Yes. And imagine being a teenager, or put yourself in your child's body, like put yourself in your child's situation. Like there's, friends of my kids, or parents of my children's friends who every time I talk, it's all about how hard their life is. And I'm like, have you spent any energy investing in how you want to feel and putting yourself in your child's shoes? Because it's very difficult for me to connect with you when all you want to do is complain about what's not working in your life. I'm like, because you're chronically investing there. So for me, very early on, I realized I did feel alone because I wanted to feel good, which is very interesting to say because I knew there had to be another way and I had to learn to fight for my joy. I had to learn to fight to feel good, from fighting with myself to kind of get out of this current of the cultural conversation. Yeah, it
I
was.
love that. Oh gosh, that's so yeah, almost like being addicted to misery and
Mhm.
suffering and that you wanted to shift out of that and you recognized it. I've reached my quota. And there's something in it that can feel it's toxic, but I think it's like you have to get uncomfortable because there's a part of that shutting down, being miserable it can kind of be like delicious in a really weird way because it's a way to avoid really living your life. And so when
And
you,
feeling your feelings.
yes, and feeling your feelings, and when you step out of that, that can be real, that's the unknown and be really scary.
Mhm.
And being addicted to that misery and indulging in it, you were like, I don't want to do that anymore. What was scary about that for you when you decided to fight for your joy? Or was it scary? How did you feel fighting for your joy?
Yeah, so there's actually a story I tell in the book. Um, and this kind of goes into like how I teach people how to get there. So Danielle Laporte, I don't know if you're familiar with Danielle Laporte's work. She had a book come out around the time I was diagnosed. It was called The Desire Map. And I was very into much personal development. And so if anyone has ever heard the words manifesting, abundance, all the things, I could not conceptualize how to put feeling good, personal development, manifestation into my modern day parenting life. I could not figure it out because I was like, it's not about vision boarding and meditating all the time. The second I open my eyes, I'm yelling or I want it. Like, I just couldn't get it. And so, for whatever reason, for me personally, what kind of like the light bulb went on was in her book, The Desire Map. I took away that it's not the thing you're after, it's the feeling. And so one of my favorite journal prompts is, wouldn't it be nice if? I'm not asking you what you want. I'm not asking you what you want to change. I'm asking you kind of like, what are your desires? Wouldn't it be nice if? And if you took 2 minutes, like right now or after you're listening to this conversation, and you're like, wouldn't it be nice if? And everything that you write down, it could be about your children, could be about yourself, could be about your life. These are things that are inside of you that want to come out. And it's not the actual thing that you want, it's the feeling. So wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to work next week? Wouldn't it be nice if we could move? Wouldn't it be nice if I made $1 million? Wouldn't it be nice if my children just listened to me and I didn't have to yell and tell them 80 times? What is the feeling that you're after? Well, maybe the kid thing, it could be respected, right? Like, I want to feel respected. Wouldn't it if I felt spacious, if I felt free? So then you get the feeling. And then I always say, like, I mean, I have a hat over here that says, how do you want to feel? Like, I'm constantly asking myself, how do I want to feel? And that's my North Star. So I'm always focused on it. And when I wanted to feel good, I was asking myself, well, what do I need to feel good? So I knew it wasn't the thing I was after. We're so culturally conditioned to like go after the goal. Okay, I'm going to hustle and abandon myself until I reach the goal. And then you reach the goal and you're like, okay, the goal's here, but I'm depleted. I feel unfulfilled. People say that in parenting too. I'm just going to do my best that I possibly can until my children are out of the house or until they're in school or until they're in middle school or until they're in high school. Like, we just keep moving the goalpost. Guess what? Your kids get out of the house and you're lost and you're still a parent. There, you don't stop parenting at 18 years old.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, you know this. And then it's like, oh, new level, new devil. There's new skills that you need to learn. So it's like, get the foundation in place. So the story I was telling inside my book was I knew all of this. It's not the thing I was after, it's the feeling. I come home one day, I'm in the middle of treatment of my cancer diagnosis, and I did talk about my cancer Yes, I did talk. I'm like telling you so many stories. I did talk about my cancer diagnosis. So I was in the middle of my treatment. Okay. So I came home. I have nothing inside of me. I'm like, no energy, no nothing, but I'm having an actual panic attack in the middle of the night. I go into the bathroom, and the story I'm repeating in my mind is, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm very scared. Okay. My body is in a chronic state of fight or flight. And I could get myself, I had enough self-awareness and self-coaching that I stopped myself and I came back to present. And I'm like, Heather, how do you want to feel? I'm like, I want to feel alive. I'm like, okay, are you dead? No, I'm not. I'm still physically actually alive. Like I am here. I'm alive, but I want to feel alive. So I got my brain, the story in my mind of I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, to I am here, I am alive. I want to feel, how do I want to feel? I want to feel alive. I want to feel alive. I want to feel alive. I started repeating that, how I want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then more fear came over me because in the moment I realized I had no evidence in my life of what aliveness felt like.
Mm.
And that this feeling that I was after was uncertain to me because I didn't have any former life experience of what aliveness felt like. Feeling depressed, feeling lack, feeling not enough was my only way of existence. And then feeling, and then I started overachieving. And I still felt lack because I was exhausted. I was fatigued, but it looked like I had more on the outside. And so I really had to get super crystal clear on what did aliveness look like. And so that day forward, I started asking myself, wouldn't it be nice if? And I started asking myself, what would an alive version of me do? And I didn't know. I had to create it. So I'm like, what would an alive person do today when she has nothing? She's going to get out of bed and take a shower. And I just kept doing that. I wasn't pushing, I wasn't hustling, I wasn't like all or nothing mindset. It was chipping away at that version of myself. How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? And so I'm still asking myself that because I'm the creator of my life. So I'm like, how do I want to feel mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually? When things get out of alignment, I'm going back into what action do I need to take today, this week, next week? What conversations do I need to have to get back in alignment with how I want to feel? That's one part. That's me getting back in alignment, not self-abandoning, looking at my stuff. That's a whole other conversation of like, well, now I'm raising a teenager and my teenager's triggering the crap out of me and my teenager's struggling. So how do I show up for them? And doing that work has greatly improved my parenting and also set me up for success when my child became a teenager and now the other two following suit.
Yes. Doing your own work. And how has that looked? How has that helped you? Going through all of that in order to be a better parent for your kids.
Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, I was very challenged with my oldest child's behavior. And I always say, I talk about it in the book, like that problem child is your greatest gift because they're just triggering. If you have a bruise or a wound or a fear, they'll find it and they will trigger it. And so, but I knew there was the part of me that was being triggered, which was just like a deep, deep primal fear. And I can talk about those fears, but I also could see that I had to figure out how to hold my fear and not parent from a chronic place of fear while also seeing how he was struggling. and how I needed to advocate. I needed to use my voice. I needed to advocate on his behalf. We had to do things unconventionally. And I also needed to become a leader and a champion and not give up on him. Like I needed to hold him, which took a lot of energy. Like I needed to curate my own energy so I could hold him and like coach him and be like, you got this. We're going to figure this out. Like, I know you want to be in bed all day, every day, but like, you got to show up. Like, I get it. We can go down the rabbit hole of getting you a diagnosis and putting you on medication. There's nothing wrong with that, but you still need to show up and we need to push through this resistance. We need to chip away. And I also had to, come back to my own emotional well-being of like, I want to scream. I want to yell. I want to say the most hurtful things to my child right now because I'm in my red zone. And I want to be like, who the do you think you are? And then I'll go in a shame spiral. And I may do that and I'm going to have to come back and repair. But at the end of the day, I also have to see that my child is struggling and they're trying to figure out who they are in this next phase and season of their life. And I need to help them navigate that while they also do not want help from their mother. And so you're navigating all of this in this emotionally uncomfortable kind of like tunnel that everyone's walking through.
Yes. The fear piece. I mean, it's like fear, and then we want to control. Like you said, with wanting to like fix it, give advice versus, really managing our own uncomfortable emotions and that fear and being able to come alongside of him. And I think in our fear, that's when we want to jump in there. That's when we want to fix. And that's when they're like, woo, back off. We actually what I learned is we create the very thing we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And by trying to control things. And my oldest was my greatest teacher as well. And the more that I tried to control her, the more I tried to push, it just inflamed our relationship so much more. It just doesn't work.
The hardest thing, so my podcast used to be called Mom is in Control. And then I changed the title to Emotionally Uncomfortable because when we are trying to control externally, we just feel out of control internally. And so you can see how you just think about it. Like if you're trying to control the way you look all the time, it's because you feeling out of control internally. If you're trying to control other people's behavior, it's because you don't know how to control your own emotional behavior. And like I tell people, I read human behavior as a language, which is very vulnerable for people. But I'm like, I can just look and observe what you're trying to control and tell you exactly what you're avoiding inside of yourself. But children are a beautiful teacher of that. And I could see myself becoming controlling. And he just would literally look at me and be like, are you done yet? Like, let me know when you're ready to like let go because you pushing me or controlling me. For him, it didn't really push him away. He just stood steady and he was like, let me know essentially when you're ready to surrender. He didn't say that, but that's what his behavior was doing. Cause like I would try to control something. He's like, how's that going to work out for you? And I'm like, fuck, it's not going to work out. Right. So I'm like, damn it. But what I realized is once I did surrender and like let go, like I'm not going to be able to get you out of bed every day. I'm not. But what I had to do was watch this child becoming an adult I want everyone to hear me, feel the full range of their emotions and their natural consequence of their behavior. So if you don't go to school, you don't get the grade. And I just had to watch and wait. And then that part of me that was like, I need to fix this. I need to rescue this. And I'm like, well, I always use the analogy of like going bowling with the bumpers on. Like I'm watching from afar. I'm not going to let them drown, but I'm also like like gently being like, okay, what are we going to do about this? And the more you shut down, I'm just like, okay, he hasn't hit his rock bottom yet. Right. But if it's becoming disruptive in our home to the point where I'm out of control, I'm like, listen, if you don't figure this out, like I gotta take this to the next level. And that may require you being removed from the home. That may be required. What we ended up doing was pulling him out of school. And the school didn't agree. My husband didn't agree. And I just was like, I'm here to keep my child alive. And so I
Yeah.
pulled him out of school and I said, if you don't want to go to school, that's fine. You don't have to be in this conventional way, but you're not going to be home all the time. So you have to go get a full-time job. And then we'll do just unconventional learning. But I said, you are going to be finishing your high school diploma. So we got a tutor. He finished school while he was working full time, and his mental health skyrocketed. But in that moment, I had to trust my instincts and go against literally what everyone else was telling me.
I thank you for saying that, because we have this path that we think it's supposed to look like. And our kids are going to take different paths. It's not all going to look the same. And you had to be willing to sit in the discomfort of that in order to support him in that way. And I see that a lot working with moms. I saw it in my own life. It's like I wanted to control things so I could feel better, because at least it felt like when I was controlling things that maybe I was doing something, but actually I was getting in the way. It's very, very counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for you, that was not easy to do, especially when you had pushback from people around you.
Yeah. And there's two things that I reflect on often is who was the adult that I needed? And I don't mean the exact, that's all we're doing. Like parenting is incredibly selfish. I don't know if anyone has realized that.
I was thinking that the other day.
I'm literally living to reparent my younger self. Like when my child is struggling, in my head, I'm thinking, what was the adult I needed? Like parenting is the most selfish act of all. And I think it is hilarious that we think giving to ourselves is selfish. And I'm like, it's selfish not to. Like we are so egocentric. And it's like, I'm a parent. Look at me. Look at my trophy child. Like, it's ridiculous. We are so self-absorbed as parents. And it's like, oh, now I have children. That's my identity. Okay, good. Like, it is so selfish when you actually think of parenting. Even now, as my child's getting older, I am observing how people are like, what's he doing? What's he doing with his, like, who's he going to be? Like, what's his education? What's the job that he's going to get? And I'm watching myself protecting my ego when people ask me that question, because who cares? Like, oh, my child became a doctor. Is your child happy? Because a lot of the physicians I talk to are miserable. But it's like, oh, well, it's good for my ego. I raised a doctor. And I'm like, oh my God, like parenting is so self-absorbed, and it's fascinating to watch. So when we can be aware of that and just learn to respect our child in their own human experience, it is incredibly beautiful to watch how they grow up. But wow, we think we have control. We have no control.
Yes, it is beautiful to watch. It is. And I know, Heather, we have to go. Gosh, I feel like we hardly even touched. We're going to have you back on and schedule another time, because we hardly touched the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this was just so good and such a conversation that we need to be having. And I know that our listeners, it's like you've given them new things to chew on and to think about. And what is like one thing that I want you to tell everybody where to find you and about your podcast and your book, but what's one thing that you want to say in closing that you didn't get to say? Because we talked about so many things.
Oh, I used to think I was screwing up my kids. And I think that's one of our biggest fears, especially after I had my diagnosis. And when I surrendered that I am the exact person that my child needs in this life, and regardless if it's biological or adoption, they chose me to guide them through this life. When I accept that fact, it took a lot of pressure that I needed to perform a certain way. And also realizing that parenting is a relationship. We are not here to control or manipulate another human. And just like any intimate relationship that you truly care about, if you can say, I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to grow, you will always have a child that will come back home. And we can control all we want until they get to a certain age and they have their own independence and they say, see you later. I can't, like, I felt controlled for so many years. Now I'm out of here. And I have seen amazing things happen for people who are like, I wish I had you when my child were little. And I was like, listen, you can always repair.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things my parents could do now if they actually wanted to or tried. I think there's also a generation of so much shame. They could repair easily. Just have a conversation, write a letter. It's never too late. And so just look in the mirror, say, what does this say about me? What work am I not doing? Ask your children for feedback. And if they feel safe enough, they will give you honest feedback. And remember, you are so imperfect, and that's okay. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. It gives them permission to be imperfect as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. I love that. Yeah. We're exactly who our kids needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love thinking about it like that. So tell them where to find you, Heather.
Yeah. So I talk a lot on my podcast, Emotionally Uncomfortable. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, and just go to the website, Heather Chauvin, Chauvin. I have free resources. My book is there. You can get my book on Amazon or Audibles or wherever books are sold online. It's just a journey. It's like start somewhere, listen, learn, and you will get to where you need to go if you stay open.
So good. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Well, that's it for today. And thank you, friend, for joining me. And if you are enjoying this podcast, if you could forward it to a friend, let them know what we're doing here at Moms of Tweens and Teens. We are all about encouraging other moms that are in the trenches and helping them to know that they're not alone and giving them wonderful resources to help on this journey. And so if you could leave a review, share it with a friend, that would be awesome. I would be so appreciative. It really helps to get the word out. So that's it for today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you back here next week.